James J. Barrington III was born into a world of fine silks, crystal chandeliers and sprawling estates. One of the world's youngest billionaires, he made his fortune through a series of savvy tech investments and business acquisitions. His last name carried weight in the exclusive circles of New York's high society. But behind the luminous parties and philanthropic galas stood a man whose desires and weaknesses were unknown to many until one fateful New Year's Eve, when everything began to crumble. At 38, Jay was tall, charismatic, and effortlessly commanding. Friends, acquaintances, and even strangers regarded him as a modern-day Midas. Whatever he touched seemed to turn to gold. His wife, Catherine "Cat" Ellsworth Barrington, was the beloved granddaughter of the late Senator Ellsworth, a prominent figure in Washington. Graceful in posture, eloquent in speech, and revered for her philanthropic heart, Cat served as the moral compass in Jay's life, or so it appeared. In truth, they had encountered storms in their marriage that few people outside their inner circle could ever imagine. On the outskirts of these matrimonial tensions hovered Eleanor Saunders, Cat's childhood friend. Although Eleanor had grown up with fewer privileges, she was every bit as ambitious as the Barringtons' circle demanded. She was a talented publicist who managed the images of high-profile celebrities, politicians, and business moguls. By tying her personal brand to powerful families, she had managed to ascend the social ladder, and thanks to Cat's generosity, Eleanor found an easy entry into the Barringtons' luminous world. But loyalty and love often twisted into envy and hidden desires. This is the story of ambition, emotional depth, unexpected betrayals, and the personal growth that emerges from the rubble of one tragic New Year's Eve. It is a drama that will reveal how even the seemingly invincible can fall when desire meets desperation. And it is a tale that will, despite its heartbreak, leave behind an inspiring message of resilience and authenticity. Cat Ellsworth Barrington watched the city lights from her penthouse window. The top-floor apartment of the Barrington Tower overlooked Central Park, giving her an unrivaled panoramic view of Manhattan's skyline. It was December 29th, and the city was bustling with holiday magic. Her gentle fingertips cradled a champagne flute, its contents shimmering as gold flecks from the overhead chandelier danced upon the glass. Cat took a slow sip, letting the fizz brush against her lips. Thoughts consumed her. The arrival of a new year often brought with it reflective introspection, a chance to evaluate what had gone right and what had gone heartbreakingly wrong. She had made a promise to herself. If Jay continued his reckless disregard for their marriage, she would walk away. That resolution had taken shape just after Thanksgiving, when a particularly humiliating social incident left her re-evaluating everything. In the quiet, reflective hours before the city awoke, she had penned a letter to her family lawyer. Her father's side of the family was well versed in contractual negotiations and ironclad prenuptial agreements. Cat knew exactly how to handle this should the worst happen. In her mind, the worst was no longer an if, but a when. Though she felt pangs of guilt and doubt, part of her harbored a calm sense of resolution, like a woman steeling herself before stepping onto a battlefield. She had hoped her marriage would never see this day, yet here she was, bracing for impact. Before she could sink deeper into her thoughts, the melodic chime of the elevator echoed through the penthouse. Jay arrived home, accompanied by an invigorating gust of winter air. His coat dripped with melting sleet, and his hair, styled in a precisely cut fade, glistened with the remnants of the storm outside. The tension in his forehead relaxed only marginally when he saw Cat. He walked directly to the bar cart near the fireplace, poured himself a neat scotch, and glanced at her. "Late night?" Cat asked, her tone clipped but not overtly accusatory. "A business dinner that ran over," he replied, voice devoid of warmth. "Some men in Dubai are looking to expand their portfolio. Had to negotiate terms." Though outwardly calm, an undercurrent of tension crackled around him. Cat nodded, unwilling to press further. Negotiation was a code word Jay sometimes used for activities that weren't strictly business-related. In the past, it had covered everything from hush-hush deals with unscrupulous investors to potentially flirtatious dinners with prospective female partners in the tech world. Over the last year, Kat had grown more certain that negotiation was Jay's catch-all for living a double life. They stood together in silence, the clink of ice in Jay's glass and the whistle of the December wind, the only sounds in the room. Finally, Kat spoke. "New Year's Eve is soon. You remember the benefit gala we're hosting, right?" she asked. He nodded, swirling his drink. "Of course. It's the biggest event of the year. Hard to forget. Donations for the Children's Arts Program, that jazz band from Juilliard, our usual circle of notable people. Elena's done a fine job planning it." Kat stiffened. She was painfully aware of how comfortable Elena and Jay had become. Sly looks at parties, secret glances in corners. Though she tried not to jump to conclusions, trust was waning. She mustered the composure that had made her a pillar of Manhattan society. "Yes, Elena's planned quite a spectacle. I'm sure it'll be magnificent." Jay's expression broke into a half-smile, though it never reached his eyes. "I'll do my part." Then, downing the rest of his scotch, he walked off toward his study, leaving Kat alone with a swirl of dread and resignation in her heart. Elena Saunders had spent her entire life believing that destiny was something you fashioned with your own two hands. From the moment she left her modest home in upstate New York, she vowed to ascend the social ladder by any means necessary. And so she did. Through witty charm and strategic networking, she wrangled an internship at one of the city's top PR firms. It was there that she reconnected with Kat, a childhood friend from summer camps and sporadic family gatherings. When Kat asked Elena to manage press engagements for her philanthropic events, Elena saw her chance. She grew close to Kat and to Kat's billionaire husband, James Barrington III. At first, her interactions with Jay were professional. She helped refine his public image, ensuring that tabloids framed him as the next philanthropic tech genius. Gradually, harmless dinner meetings and gala planning sessions turned into more personal conversations. Jay was, without a doubt, mesmerizing. The sparkle in his eyes, the subtle hints of mischief in his grin, the power that radiated from him. She told herself that developing a crush was natural. Billionaires, especially handsome, charismatic ones, often attracted admiration, but it went beyond admiration. She found ways to keep him in conversation, kept track of his preferences, his favorite whiskey, a rare Japanese blend, his favorite late-night snack, chocolate truffles, even the rare brand of cologne he wore. She convinced herself she wasn't being disloyal to Kat. This was just how power worked. She was enthralled by it. A few days before New Year's Eve, Elena found herself in the private lounge of the Illumina, a new downtown hotel. She was finalizing the Barrington Gala's catering schedule with the manager when she received a call from Jay. "Hi," came his baritone, casual yet deliberate. Elena felt her pulse skitter. "Hello, Jay. Is everything all right?" "Just needed to discuss some changes to the guest list," he explained. "Kat mentioned you're coordinating." "That's correct," Elena answered, pen poised over her planner. "Is there anyone you'd like to add or remove?" A moment of silence, then a sigh. "I'm considering inviting some potential investors, high-net-worth individuals from overseas. We may need more VIP seating and a more discreet security detail. I hate to blindside Kat, but these folks could be beneficial for the philanthropic side." "Sure," Elena responded, scribbling notes. "I can handle that. Just forward me their names." "Elena." Jay paused as though weighing his next words. "While I have you on the line, I wanted to say, I've noticed how much work you've put into the gala. Thank you. It means a lot." Elena felt a strange flutter in her chest at his gratitude. "It's my job," she said, keeping her tone professional. "I'm happy to help, especially for Kat." "Right." Jay's voice held a faint edge of disappointment. Well, see you at the next planning session. She ended the call, exhaling. What was she doing? A niggling feeling of guilt prodded at her, but the sense of power in bridging her connection with Jay overshadowed it. She convinced herself that perhaps this was destiny, or at least something she could shape into a stepping stone for her career. Her mother's voice echoed in the back of her mind, cautioning that ambition was good, but betraying a friend wasn't. Elena brushed the thought aside. She had come too far to let moral qualms stand in her way. When the morning of December 31st arrived, Manhattan sparkled under a light dusting of snow, as though the city was decorating itself for the big night. Kat sat in front of her vanity, applying a subtle layer of lipstick. Her mind wandered to the letter she had given her lawyer, Marcus Klein. She had laid it out plainly. If Jay was unfaithful again, if he so much as humiliated her publicly in front of their social circle, she would proceed with a divorce. Her father's old friend, Jonathan Edwards, had drafted the prenuptial agreement, ensuring that Kat's inheritance would stay with her. Yet Kat felt hollow at the prospect. She didn't want to savage Jay financially or publicly. She wanted a normal marriage. But normal seemed elusive. Across the penthouse, Jay busied himself making calls about the gala. Wreathed in an aura of self-importance, he snapped at his assistants and barked instructions about the night's proceedings. Outwardly, he was the image of a man determined to put on the social event of the season. Inwardly, pockets of frustration and shame gnawed at him. He sensed that Kat was slowly but surely drawing away. He recognized the distant look in her eyes. Perhaps it was the same expression he had seen in the mirror months ago when he felt unsatisfied with their intimacy. Despite the tension, he had grown used to the air of polite estrangement in their household. Just as Kat slipped on a pearl-studded earring, her phone chimed. It was a text message from Elena. "Kat, final checklist for tonight is ready. I've updated seat assignments for some surprise guests. We need to finalize your speech notes. Let me know if you can meet around 2 p.m. at the venue." Kat smiled slightly. As complicated as she felt about Elena's closeness to Jay, she couldn't deny that Elena was an exceptional organizer. If only she could trust Elena the way she used to, back when they were kids at summer camp, braiding friendship bracelets and whispering secrets under starlit skies. Kat typed a brief reply. "Sure. See you at 2. Thank you." She rose from her dressing table and walked into the living area. Jay had just ended a call and was tossing his phone onto the couch. Their eyes met, and Kat managed a polite if chilly smile. "I'm heading out to meet with Elena," she said, sliding her arms into a tailored wool coat. "Any last-minute updates I should know about?" Jay hesitated. "I think we're good," he replied carefully. "Just try to keep a seat open near the stage for some potential investors from the Middle East." Kat inclined her head. "Will do." The tension thickened like a fog in the space between them. Even so, she gave a curt nod, turned, and headed into the private elevator that would take her down to the lavish lobby. Jay watched her go, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The venue for the Barrington New Year's Eve Gala was the Pearl Grand, a newly renovated historical hotel in Midtown. Rumored to have once hosted the likes of Frank Sinatra, the hotel boasted an opulent ballroom with gilded ceilings, a marble dance floor, and crystal chandeliers that dripped with old-world elegance. Even though it was only midday, staff swarmed the space, rolling in enormous speakers, floral arrangements, and stage lights. Elena was in the center of the chaos, clipboard in hand, directing staff with the poise of a commander, orchestrating a battlefield. She wore a sleek black blazer and stiletto boots, her hair pinned back in a professional bun. When Kat approached, Elena greeted her with a bright smile that momentarily felt genuine. "How's everything looking?" Kat asked, surveying the dais where the Juilliard Jazz Ensemble would perform. Elena sighed with relief. "We're on schedule. The only snag is the caterer got stuck with a traffic jam delivering the raw oysters for tonight's seafood bar, but they'll be here soon." Kat glanced around. "And the silent auction items? I see half of them out in the hallway." "Yes, those Tiffany Co. Donations arrived late, but we'll have everything set up in time, Elena replied, flipping pages on her clipboard. Also, I confirmed with your father's office he'll be attending with your uncle, correct? Kat nodded, though her smile wavered as she thought of seeing her father. He was unaware of the gloom haunting her marriage, at least the full extent of it. But fathers have a way of sensing these things. She wondered if the evening would bring a confrontation. Excellent. Elena flashed a grin. Would you like to finalize your speech? We need a heartfelt moment for the donors to open their wallets. Kat managed a small laugh. I'll keep it short and sweet. Elena pointed to a secluded corner of the ballroom. We can chat quietly over there. Too much hustle and bustle on the main floor. The two women walked over and took seats at an ornate table in the corner. Elena pulled out a stack of note cards that Kat had drafted. They spent the next 20 minutes refining the speech, adding a pinch of humor, a dash of sentimentality. A fleeting sense of normalcy washed over Kat, like old friends working together in a world that wasn't overshadowed by suspicion and heartbreak. Finally, Elena closed the folder. That's perfect, Kat. Kat gave a weak smile, eyes scanning the elegant space. Thank you for all you do, Elena. I'm aware that I haven't been the most gracious friend lately. Elena reached across and squeezed Kat's hand. You've had a lot on your plate, I understand. A swirl of conflicting emotions gathered in Kat's chest. She wanted to trust Elena. She longed for the simpler days of their youth. But she had seen that look in Elena's eyes when she spotted Jay across a crowded room like a hidden spark, both forbidden and irresistible. Kat's intuition whispered that danger lurked just beneath Elena's polished exterior. Yet she forced a gracious nod, tucking away her uncertainties for now. By the time dusk draped the city in a silver sheen, the Pearl Grande had transformed. The tall, arched windows glimmered with golden light from within. A red carpet stretched from the entrance down the sidewalk, where a phalanx of photographers waited to snap pictures of the arriving elite. Black SUVs and limousines lined the street. In a private suite upstairs, Jay was adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke tuxedo. His phone buzzed on the marble countertop next to a bottle of Moet Chandon. He glanced at the screen, a text from Elena. Everything is in place. If you have a moment, meet me in the mezzanine lounge to go over the VIP seating arrangement. He looked in the mirror, reflecting on his own reflection, his sharp cheekbones, thick dark hair, and an unreadable intensity in his brown eyes. A flicker of guilt surfaced. He knew he was about to risk everything, dancing on the edge of an affair with Elena. Although he had never admitted it aloud, his heart had galloped each time he stood near her. He felt alive when she paid him her undivided attention, admired him with those bright, determined eyes. He typed back, "On my way." Downstairs, in the mezzanine lounge, Elena paced near a velvet chaise, the city lights forming a luminous backdrop. She wore a scarlet gown that skimmed the floor, accentuating her figure with understated elegance. Her hair flowed in gentle waves, framing her face in a way that made her appear both regal and accessible. She turned sharply when Jay entered. A swirl of tension filled the air. To a passing observer, they might look like two colleagues about to discuss details of an event. But the moment they were alone, the unspoken pull between them intensified. "Everything's running smoothly," she said, offering him a quick smile. "We had a minor glitch with some of the media passes, but it's sorted." Jay took a step closer, the echoes of music drifting in from the ballroom. "You look stunning," he said simply. A wave of heat seemed to bind them. "It's almost midnight. Can you believe we're on the brink of a new year?" Elena swallowed, struggling to maintain her composure. Time flies. A hush enveloped them for an excruciating moment, laden with all the confessions neither dared to speak. Finally, Elena broke eye contact. "So, about those VIP seats you wanted me to arrange." Jay cleared his throat, forcing himself back into business mode. "Yes. 4 of them, front and center. Make sure the cameras angle on them during the main presentation. We need the sponsors to see that we treat our prospective partners well." I'll have my PR guy get you the seating chart. Elena nodded, scribbling notes on her phone. Done. They stared at each other again, each second thick with possibility. Then Jay forced a smile. We should get downstairs. Kat is probably greeting the first wave of guests. He turned on his heel, leaving Elena behind with her heart pounding and her mind spinning. She glanced down at her phone, feeling a pang of something that was both thrilling and terrifying. She was losing control of the game she'd orchestrated. At 8 p.m., the gala officially commenced. The guests poured in like a glamorous tide. Politicians, tech moguls, socialites and celebrities stepped onto the polished marble floor under glimmering chandeliers. An 8-piece jazz band played a lively tune near the grand staircase, while a flurry of servers in crisp white jackets circled the room, offering champagne flutes and delicate hors d'oeuvres. Kat, radiant in an ice-blue satin gown, greeted every attendee with poised gratitude. She distributed airy smiles and exchanged pleasantries, congratulating the newly engaged, offering condolences to the recently widowed, and flirting politely with elderly philanthropists. At her side was an aide to keep track of pledges. Jay worked the crowd from another angle, shaking hands and discussing potential partnerships. His presence attracted investors like moths to a flame. There was a practiced dance to how he moved from circle to circle, introducing himself, referencing shared acquaintances, dropping hints of lucrative ventures. Yet a part of him was always aware of Elena's presence across the room. At 9 p.m., Kat ascended the stage to deliver her opening speech. A hush fell over the ballroom, the band lowering its tempo. Eleanor stood near the stage's edge, clipboard still in hand, her gaze flitting between Kat and Jay. Kat's voice was warm, resonating with sincerity. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. Whether you've come to bid on rare antiques at our silent auction or simply to ring in the new year with fellow patrons of the arts, know that your presence is the lifeblood of this event. Together, we have raised an impressive sum each year for children's arts programs. Tonight, I challenge us all to raise the bar even higher. Let's celebrate our blessings by passing them on to those who need them most. A generous applause followed. Cameras flashed. Jay smiled like the devoted husband, clapping with measured pride. Elena watched Kat's composed figure on stage, a twinge of envy gnawing at her. She wanted that spotlight, that power, that reverence from a crowd, not just as a behind-the-scenes orchestrator, but as a woman who commanded respect in her own right. Once Kat stepped down, the jazz band ramped up a livelier tune. Soon, people parted into small clusters, drifting toward the silent auction area or the cocktail lounge. The evening wore on like a carefully choreographed ballet of wealth and influence. At 10:30 p.m., the energy soared. The bar was fully open, the dance floor filling with couples spinning beneath flickering colored lights. Jay located Eleanor at the silent auction table. With a subtle tilt of his head, he gestured for her to follow him out of earshot of the crowd. They ended up in a deserted hallway behind the ballroom, illuminated by a single gilded sconce. So, Jay said, voice low, did you see the numbers on that Van Cleef Arpels necklace? Bidding soared past 100,000 in a matter of minutes. Elena nodded, her heart thumping. Your guests have no shortage of generosity. Jay's gaze flickered to her lips. And you? Having a good time? She exhaled shakily. It's been busy, but yes, the event is a success so far. They stood so close that the scent of his cologne blended with the lingering aroma of champagne. Slowly his hand grazed her waist. She shivered, but didn't pull away. A swirl of guilt, excitement, and fear coursed through her. This moment, it was the culmination of all the tension and unspoken desire she had tried to ignore. She thought about Kat, about the moral line she was about to cross, and the potential consequences. But the pull toward Jay was too potent. Come, Jay whispered, stepping back. Let's get some air. Eleanor followed him to a side door, which led to a dimly lit service corridor. Once outside, they found themselves on a small balcony used by staff for smoke breaks. The city sprawled below them, a sea of luminescence, Elena's breath puffed into the chilly air. "This is insane," she murmured. Jay drew closer. "I know." They stared at each other, breath mingling in the crisp night. Then, as though succumbing to gravitational force, Jay leaned in and pressed his lips against hers. Elena's mind went blank, overtaken by the warmth of his mouth, the beat of her own pulse drumming in her ears. Time seemed to freeze, the distant sounds of celebration muffled by the blood rushing in her veins. When they broke apart, reality snapped back. "We shouldn't," Elena said, voice trembling. "But we did," Jay replied, his hand still gently cradling her neck. She closed her eyes. "What if Kat—" Jay silenced her with another kiss, urgent this time. "We'll worry about that later," he said roughly, desire clouding his judgment. "For now, I just need to feel alive." In that moment, Elena decided to let herself fall. She wanted to soar above the life she felt forced into, if only for a brief, stolen moment. Inside the ballroom, the crowd buzzed with the excitement of the approaching midnight hour. Guests chattered, took selfies, and formed circles around the stage. The band had shifted to contemporary covers, fueling an atmosphere of revelry. Waiters in crisp suits wheeled out carts of champagne, ready for the midnight toast. Kat stood near the center of the room, greeting her father and uncle. The older men praised the event, each promising substantial donations. As Kat scanned the room for Jay, she noticed he was nowhere to be found. Her heart constricted with suspicion. She inhaled deeply, reminding herself that she would not cause a scene, especially tonight. Minutes ticked by, and there was still no sign of her husband or Elena. A swirl of dread seeped into her thoughts. Had her darkest suspicions come true? At 11:45 p.m., Jay finally re-emerged from the corridor, Elena trailing behind him at a safe distance. Their faces were flushed, hair slightly askew. Kat caught sight of them near the main bar. Immediately, Kat's mind locked onto the subtle cues. The way Jay's hand lingered a bit too long on Elena's forearm, the parted lips on Elena's face, and the hazy expression of guilt. A wave of nausea gripped Kat. She steadied herself, forcing a polite smile as another acquaintance stepped up to chat. But rage and heartbreak blazed within her. She reminded herself of the letter in her safety deposit box, the plan meticulously set up with her lawyer. At midnight, she would put on the performance of a lifetime, but come dawn, everything would change. The lights dimmed at 11:55 p.m., and the large digital clock near the stage glowed red. The entire crowd gathered, champagne glasses raised. An air of electric excitement filled the ballroom as the band played a jazzy countdown medley. Kat found Jay in the throng. He looped an arm around her waist, pulling her close for the sake of the cameras. Elena drifted on the opposite side, eyes catching Kat's for a brief, guilty flicker. The tension between the three of them buzzed like a live wire. 10, the crowd chanted. 9, 8, 7. Kat closed her eyes briefly, her heart pounding like thunder. She heard Jay's breath near her ear, felt the crush of his body. It all felt fake, a hollow gesture for the flashes of the paparazzi. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fireworks erupted in the night sky beyond the ballroom windows. Confetti rained from the ceiling, shimmering flecks of silver and gold. The band roared into Auld Lang Syne. People hugged and kissed, raising their glasses in celebration. Jay tilted Kat's chin, giving her a brief, perfunctory kiss on the lips for the cameras. She tasted the faint residue of Elena's perfume. The knowledge made her stomach churn. "Happy New Year," Jay whispered, his tone strangely hollow. Kat forced a serene smile, though her eyes blazed with silent understanding. "Happy New Year." The clock read 12:15 a.m. when Kat excused herself from the dance floor. She retreated to the ladies' lounge, a plush antechamber with velvet sofas and mirrors. There, she locked herself in a private stall, heart racing. She had suspected that Jay might be unfaithful, but to see the brazen intimacy between him and Elena felt like a knife twisting in her gut. tear escaped her eye as she thought of their wedding day, of the times she believed in the depth of their bond. But Kat Ellsworth Barrington was not a timid woman. She had prepared for this. She unlatched the stall and headed to the mirrored vanity, quickly reapplying her lipstick and adjusting the straps of her gown. The reflection that stared back at her was no victim. It was a woman determined to reclaim her life. Kat composed herself and stepped back into the corridor. Soon she spotted Elena by the silent auction table, fiddling with her phone. Elena's eyes darted up in alarm at Kat's approach. "Elena," Kat said evenly, "could I speak with you in private?" Elena swallowed. "Of course." They found a small alcove next to a decorative fountain in the lobby. The hush of trickling water offered a measure of privacy. Kat fixed Elena with a cool gaze, her voice calm but edged with tension. "Do you care about me at all?" Elena's mouth opened but no words emerged. A faint tremble in her hands betrayed her composure. Kat pressed on. "I saw the way Jay looked at you, the way you looked at him. Don't lie to me. I deserve the truth." Tears welled in Elena's eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. I got caught up. I've always admired him. I'm so sorry." Her voice wavered with genuine remorse and embarrassment. Kat stood rigid. "I'm not naive. You've succeeded in capturing his attention, and frankly, I don't have the strength to fight over a man who can't remain faithful. But you've been my friend since childhood. I can't believe you would do this." Eleanor's tears spilled over. "I never wanted it to go this far. I was just, I don't know, enamored." "It's not an excuse." Kat inhaled a shaky breath. The disappointment in her chest felt immense, like a tidal wave crashing against the shores of her faith in friendship. "You're right. It's not. Now get out of my sight. I need to be alone." Elena, sobbing quietly, nodded and fled the alcove. Kat stood there for a moment, letting the pain wash over her. She sensed that a storm was coming, and she was both terrified and relieved that it might finally free her from the pretense of a perfect life. Meanwhile, in one of the upper-level balconies, Jay spoke with a cluster of investors, each swirling top-shelf champagne in crystal flutes. Their laughter rose above the sound of the music drifting from below. Jay feigned enthusiasm, presenting them with boundless opportunities in his next venture, an international tech conglomerate. But beneath the polished facade, his mind spiraled with the realization that Kat knew. He had felt the shift in her demeanor, seen the icy clarity in her eyes. Elena's abrupt exit from the ballroom further confirmed it. Something had happened between the two women. Jay, for all his cunning in business, realized the precariousness of his situation. He was about to lose the empire he and Kat had built, both socially and financially. His father's legacy, the Barrington name, the philanthropic ties, the board seats, everything stood on the brink of collapse. When the group of investors finally meandered away, Jay stepped down the elegant marble staircase. Anxiety gripped him, twisting in his gut. He was about to search for Kat when his personal assistant approached, phone in hand. "Sir, a phone call for you," the assistant said discreetly. "It's your lawyer." Jay frowned, taking the phone and moving aside. "This is Jay." "Jay, I need to see you urgently." The lawyer's voice crackled over the line. "I've received a note from Kat's lawyer, Marcus Klein. There's talk of a potential separation. I wouldn't be bothering you tonight except it sounds serious. Something about a revised prenuptial clause. This could be catastrophic for you if you don't act fast." Jay's breath caught in his throat. "Thanks for telling me. I'll handle it." He ended the call, trembling. Kat was far more cunning than he had given her credit for. She had planned for his betrayal. The reality of it cut him to the core. He had always lived with a sense of invincibility, but the possibility of losing everything, his marriage, his fortune, his social standing, manifested like a dark cloud overhead. By the time Jay found Kat, it was well past 1 a.m. Guests continued to mingle, though some had begun trickling out. The once lively band was on a break, replaced by a recorded playlist drifting softly through the speakers. Kat stood near the arched doorway leading out to the balcony, arms folded across her torso. Her gaze was distant, fixed on the blurred headlights in the streets below. "Kat," Jay said, stepping up behind her, "we need to talk." She turned slowly, her expression stony. "Now you want to talk?" He inhaled. "I just got off the phone with my lawyer," he said. "Yes," Kat cut in, a fierce calm in her eyes. "I gave Marcus some paperwork. I'm sure you've heard the gist of it by now." Jay closed his eyes momentarily. "Kat, please, let's go somewhere private." She laughed, a hollow sound. "Private like the corridor where you and Elena went, or maybe the balcony outside. How many places did you sneak away to tonight?" "God, Jay, I warned you. I told you I was done being humiliated." His voice dropped to a plea. "I can't lose you, Kat. I know I've made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can—" She held up a hand, stopping him. "Let me be clear. This is happening. I won't be your puppet, and I won't turn a blind eye anymore." Jay's jaw tightened. "You want the entire Barrington Empire to be dragged through the mud in a messy divorce?" Kat took a step closer, refusing to back down. "I want a life where I'm not constantly second-guessing my husband's loyalty. If that means I walk away from you and all of this, then so be it. My father's name, my own assets, they'll protect me." A flicker of anger lit Jay's eyes. "You'd ruin me over a single mistake?" Kat scoffed. "A single mistake? Don't insult me. This was the final straw, not the first." They glared at each other, tension scorching the air. Then, as though spent, Kat exhaled and turned away. "I'm leaving. Have your assistant handle the rest of the night's obligations. I'll find my own way home." Jay reached for her arm, desperation edging his voice. "Kat, don't. Let's at least keep up appearances until the guests are gone." She shook him off, pain etched across her face. "Appearances are the only thing you care about. I won't do it anymore." She pivoted and walked away, her gown swishing against the polished floor. Jay stood rooted, feeling the glare of a few onlooking guests who had witnessed the confrontation. As Kat disappeared through the main doors, the facade of James Barrington III began to show its first cracks. Kat stepped outside, taking in a gulp of the cold January air. The paparazzi had largely dispersed. Only a few lingered, smoking or scrolling on their phones, anticipating a final photo opportunity. A waiting black sedan, part of the Barrington fleet, idled by the curb. Kat approached the driver. "I need a ride home," she said softly, fighting back tears. The driver dipped his head in a silent nod and opened the back door for her. She slid onto the leather seat, pressing her head back against the cushion, closing her eyes. As the car eased into the city streets, Kat reached for her phone. She typed a message to Marcus Klein, her lawyer. "It's done. Proceed as planned." She hit send, letting the magnitude of her decision sink in. After a decade of marriage, this was how it all unraveled on a night that was supposed to celebrate new beginnings. Yet she felt a spark of relief in her chest, a glimmer of hope for a life free of betrayal. Outside, Times Square shimmered with neon intensity, the city still alive with New Year's celebrations. The car began to weave through traffic. Suddenly, Kat noticed the driver had taken a different route than usual. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice tense. "Alternate route, ma'am. Some roads are closed for the holiday," he responded curtly. Kat sank back. The route wound through a dimly lit industrial district, far from the usual hustle of Midtown. She glanced out the tinted window. Factories, warehouses, and empty streets scrolled by like a scene from a different city altogether. Then, in a flash of blinding confusion, the sedan lurched violently. Kat was thrown forward against the seat in front of her. The driver slammed on the brakes, cursing. Another impact came from the side, crunching metal against metal. Kat's screams caught in her throat as the world spun in horrifying slow motion. When the chaos ended, the sedan had crashed into a lamppost. Smoke rose from the crumpled hood. Kat's head pounded. She felt warm liquid trickling down her temple. Gathering what remained of her strength, she tried to open the door, but found it jammed. She fumbled for the seatbelt, heart hammering in her chest, eyes blurred with pain. The driver groaned, pinned by the deflated airbag. Outside the window, Kat heard muffled voices, frantic footsteps. She prayed someone would come. Darkness threatened to swallow her, each ragged breath feeling like a monumental effort. News of the crash spread quickly, partly through the hush-hush channels of the wealthy social set, partly through a few paparazzi tips. By the time Jay was informed, he was still at the gala, his phone buzzing incessantly. The moment the words "cat" and "accident" registered, he bolted from the ballroom, ignoring the curious stares of the remaining guests. Eleanor watched him rush out, panic gripping her. She pursued him toward the exit. "Jay, what happened?" "She was in a car accident," he said breathlessly, eyes wild with fear. "I need to get to the hospital. Now." Eleanor's guilt surged. She reached for Jay, but he withdrew. "Please let me help," she insisted, voice trembling. "I can at least arrange your transport." Jay hesitated, running a shaky hand through his hair. Finally he nodded. Together they scrambled into his private car, and Elena frantically directed the driver to the hospital where Kat was supposedly taken. As they wove through the midnight streets, Jay felt sick to his stomach, a blur of regrets and guilt swirling in his mind. Every second felt like an eternity. He clutched his phone, waiting for calls or texts from the hospital. Meanwhile, Eleanor sat beside him, tears threatening to spill, no words able to repair the devastation she had helped create. When they arrived at the emergency entrance, Jay bolted from the car. The harsh fluorescent lights illuminated frantic nurses, incoming patients, and an air heavy with urgency. At the front desk, he demanded to know where Catherine Barrington had been taken. The nurse on duty pointed him down the corridor. Elena followed close behind. They found a doctor talking in hushed tones with a man who looked like Kat's father's security detail. Jay approached, breath catching in his throat. "Where is she?" Jay snapped. "Is she okay?" The doctor, a composed woman in scrubs, regarded him solemnly. "You're her husband?" "Yes," she exhaled. "She's alive but in critical condition. She suffered a severe head injury and internal bleeding. We've stabilized her, but the next 48 hours are crucial." Jay's shoulders sagged. The high-stakes reality of possibly losing her extinguished any illusions of negotiation or sweet talk. Tears burned at the corners of his eyes. "I need to see her." "She's in the ICU," the doctor explained. "We'll allow one visitor at a time for a few minutes. She's not conscious." Jay swallowed hard and nodded. Elena hovered behind him, expression haunted. The doctor continued, "We'll do everything we can. Be prepared, though her injuries are extensive." Jay's insides twisted. All the power and money in the world couldn't change this. At that moment, he realized the hollowness of everything he'd chased. The affairs, the business deals, the pursuit of limitless luxury. None of it mattered when the woman he once vowed to love lay on the brink of death. In the sterile confines of the ICU, Kat's body was a maze of tubes and monitors. The beep of medical machines echoed in the small room, each beep resonating like a hammer on Jay's heart. He stood at the edge of the bed, tears finally freeing themselves. She looked so fragile, her skin pale, her hair matted with dried blood. A large bandage wrapped around her head. Jay gently reached for her hand, which felt cold to the touch. Memories of their wedding day flashed through his mind. Kat's radiant smile, her hopeful eyes, their promise to stand by each other no matter what storms arose. He felt as though he'd broken every vow. Kat's father appeared in the doorway, face etched with devastation and fury. He stepped into the room, fists clenched. Jay turned to him, voice catching. I'm so sorry." The older man's jaw tightened. "Spare me your apologies. My daughter was leaving your disastrous gala, and now she's fighting for her life. I don't want to hear excuses. If you had treated her right, she wouldn't have been in that car tonight." Jay bowed his head, tears slipping from his eyes. "She wanted a divorce, but I never wanted this." Kat's father glared. You may not have wanted it, but your betrayal led her to this point. You're going to pray, Barrington, that she pulls through. And if she does, don't expect her to be by your side." Before Jay could respond, the older man walked out, anguish and rage leaving a tangible wake. Jay sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. In that moment, he felt impossibly small. Outside in the waiting room, Elena sat with trembling hands. Reporters had already caught wind of the accident and were flooding her phone with calls. She silenced it, sickened by the knowledge of her complicity. If Kat died, that guilt would be her cross to bear for the rest of her life. She spotted Kat's father storming through the corridor. Swallowing hard, she stood up, intending to offer condolences or some measure of comfort. As soon as he saw her, his eyes burned with contempt. "Elena," he hissed, "you're a traitor." She flinched, tears gathering in her eyes. "I never wanted this to happen, I swear." He advanced, pointing a finger. "You were her closest friend, and you drove a wedge into her marriage. You want pity? You won't find it here. Don't you dare go near her." Eleanor broke down, sobbing. Kat's father shoved past her, heading for another wing of the hospital. The weight of condemnation from someone so close to Kat cut deeper than Elena had expected. She realized with gut-wrenching clarity that she had thrown away a lifelong bond for a fleeting moment of passion, and now the consequences were dire. Hours stretched into days as Kat remained in critical condition. Jay barely left the hospital, living on coffee and quick naps in the stiff waiting room chairs. He grew haggard, unshaven, clothes wrinkled. Reporters swarmed outside, hungry for news on the Barrington scandal that had now exploded across the media. Rumors abounded. Some said Kat had discovered an affair, others claimed it was purely an accident. In the court of public opinion, Jay was on trial as the unfaithful billionaire who drove his wife away. Kat's father spent most of his time by her bedside. Occasionally, Jay would see him in the hallway. Each time, the older man's glare told Jay he was unwelcome. Meanwhile, Elena disappeared. Rumors suggested she had fled to a friend's place in Connecticut, or maybe left the state altogether. The scandal had devastated her career and personal life. Clients dropped her. Friends distanced themselves. She was now a pariah in the circle she once strove to conquer. On the third day, Jay sat in the cafeteria, hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee. His lawyer joined him, face grim. "How bad is it?" Jay asked wearily. The lawyer pursed his lips. "Marcus Klein filed the divorce papers on Kat's behalf. He's also secured a freeze on certain joint accounts pending settlement. Right now, your assets are in jeopardy. The press is painting you as a villain, which is putting pressure on your board positions. Share values in your tech holdings have dropped about 8% since the news broke." Jay exhaled sharply. His kingdom was unraveling with every breath. "What about Kat's condition?" The lawyer's face softened. "I'm not a doctor, Jay. Last I heard, no change. You should prepare yourself." Jay wanted to scream, to punch something, to rewrite the last week of his life, but he merely bowed his head, swallowing tears. "I need to see her," he whispered. Then he set the coffee down and headed back toward the ICU. That evening, at around 11 p.m., a frantic overhead announcement called for a trauma team to report to Kat's room. Jay, dozing in the waiting room, jolted awake as nurses and doctors sprinted past him. He recognized Kat's father among them, his face pale and stricken. Something inside Jay broke loose. He ran after them, but hospital staff blocked his path to the ICU door. He caught a glimpse of the medical team rushing in with emergency equipment, the sharp beep of alarms echoing down the corridor. He pressed his face against the glass, heart pounding with dread. Minutes felt like centuries. The beep of machines took on a terrifying urgency. Then, suddenly, a long, uninterrupted tone. Jay watched as the doctors worked frantically, compressing Kat's chest, administering drugs. Sweat drenched his body as tears streamed down his face. Nurses barked orders. He clung to the small window, powerless. Finally, the noise died. The doctor stepped out, her expression heavy with grief. Kat's father stood behind her, face ashen. The doctor pulled down her surgical mask and said words that shattered Jay's world. "She's gone. We did everything we could." Jay staggered back, a hoarse cry breaking from his lips. A crushing weight pressed on his chest, as though the hospital walls themselves were collapsing onto him. Kat's father let out a wail of anguish. Jay wanted to reach out, to beg for forgiveness, but he found himself frozen, drowning in guilt and sorrow. Catherine Ellsworth Barrington, beloved daughter, philanthropist, and bright star of Manhattan high society, died in the quiet halls of the ICU, the victim of a tragic accident complicated by heartbreak and betrayal. The funeral was held a week later in an old cathedral with stained glass windows, casting shards of colored light onto the mourners. Hundreds attended: politicians, celebrities, philanthropists, and everyday people who had benefited from Kat's generosity. An elaborate marble casket, draped in white lilies, stood at the front. Eulogies were offered, praising Kat's kindness, her intelligence, her commitment to helping others. Jay stood in the front row, eyes hollow. He wore a black suit, the collar tight around his throat. Grief weighed on him like lead. No matter how many times he tried to find words, none came. Public opinion now viewed him as a callous adulterer, and many believed that heartbreak and stress had contributed to Kat's tragic end. Elena did not attend the funeral. She sent a tear-stained letter to Kat's father, but it was returned unopened. Her life in New York had effectively disintegrated. Clients cut ties. The media smeared her as a home wrecker. In a desperate act of self-preservation, she moved out of the city, hoping to rebuild somewhere else. Kat's father delivered the final eulogy, voice trembling. He recounted Kat's childhood dreams, her charitable endeavors, her compassionate nature. Then, glaring at Jay through tears, he said, "It is not for me to cast the final judgment on those responsible for my daughter's pain, but I know that if Kat were here, she would want us to find peace, to continue the work she left behind. May her death not be in vain." Jay broke down in sobs. The crowd quietly filed out, leaving him alone with the casket. For a moment he rested his forehead against the cool marble, whispering apologies that would never be heard. He was an emperor crumbling within the kingdom of his own regret. In the days following the funeral, the financial and reputational fallout only worsened for Jay. Key investors withdrew from his businesses. Board members pushed him to step down. He found himself ousted from the company he had built. Deals collapsed. The Barrington name, once synonymous with success, was now marred by scandal. The tabloids declared him a cautionary tale, proof that even billionaires could fall from grace in an instant. Kat's estate, guided by her father and a formidable legal team, enforced the prenuptial agreements to the letter. Jay faced a series of lawsuits, claiming breach of marital trust, emotional distress, and more. With no one to champion his cause, Jay began liquidating assets to cover legal fees and debt. A man once heralded as a visionary found himself nearly bankrupt, emotionally and financially. His penthouse was put on the market. The estate in the Hamptons was sold. Even the Barrington private jet was repossessed. In a last-ditch effort to salvage some sense of purpose, Jay established a small trust fund in Kat's name to support the children's arts program she had cherished. But the gesture felt hollow, overshadowed by the overwhelming guilt that kept him awake night after night. 6 months later, a weary Jay Barrington sat in a modest apartment overlooking a less glamorous part of Manhattan. Dust motes drifted in a single beam of afternoon sunlight. Gone were the extravagances, no personal chef, no live-in staff, no shimmering skyline views. He was alone in his living room, perched on a second-hand couch, checking emails on an old laptop. The doorbell rang. Jay hauled himself to his feet. Standing at the door was Kat's father, wearing a conservative coat and gloves. Jay's heart lurched. He invited the man in, though embarrassment and shame threatened to choke him. Kat's father stepped inside quietly. He looked around at the humble space, a far cry from the penthouse days. "You're looking different," he finally said, voice lacking the raw anger it once held. Jay nodded. "Life's different now. Why are you here?" Taking a deep breath, the older man said, "Because I promised Kat I would continue her work. And I've heard you've done the same. The small trust you set up for her arts program, some donors want to expand it. They reached out to me to see if I'd collaborate. I came to ask if you'd join me." Jay stood stunned, tears threatening. "I didn't expect this." Kat's father studied him. The bitterness in his eyes had softened into a mournful acceptance. "I'm not here to forgive you. I'm here because Kat believed in second chances for those willing to do real good. There is a group forming a new foundation in her name, focusing on arts education. They want me involved. They also think it's fitting if the man who was her husband, for better or worse, contributes something. Are you interested?" Jay inhaled, 1,000 emotions swirling. "Yes," he choked out. "I'd be honored." Kat's father nodded. "There's a meeting next week with the potential donors. Don't let them down." He turned and left, leaving Jay alone in the shadowy living room. In the silence, Jay sank to his knees and wept. It was not forgiveness, but it was a chance to do right by Kat's memory, a sliver of redemption in the darkness. Epilogue, the end, and the beginning. In the year that followed, Jay devoted himself to the Catherine Ellsworth Foundation for the Arts. He worked tirelessly to channel resources into arts programs for underprivileged youth, forging partnerships with schools and community centers. Though some donors were hesitant to affiliate with him initially, the sincerity of his dedication gradually won a few back. The foundation's success blossomed, providing instruments, art supplies, and workshops to thousands of children across New York. Meanwhile, Elena quietly rebuilt her life away from the city's limelight. She took a position at a smaller PR firm in Chicago, determined to learn from her mistakes. She offered to volunteer remotely for Kat's foundation, but remained on the periphery, understanding she could never fully atone for her role in Kat's heartbreak. Kat's father served as honorary chairman of the foundation, keeping a vigilant eye on Jay. Over countless meetings and phone calls, he witnessed Jay's unwavering commitment to preserving Kat's legacy. Their initial hostility gradually shifted into a reluctant respect. While the father never declared forgiveness, he came to accept that Jay truly wanted to honor the woman they had both lost. As for Jay, life was no longer a glittering tableau of galas and private jets. His days were spent at modest offices in a refurbished community center, drafting grant proposals and sitting in small, cramped boardrooms. Yet, despite the loss of wealth and status, a quiet fulfillment settled in his heart. Each child who discovered a passion for music or art under the Foundation's programs reminded him that Kat's light still lived on. In time, people forgot the lurid headlines that once dominated the tabloids. New scandals supplanted the old. For Jay Barrington, the story remained an eternal lesson in hubris, betrayal, and the price one pays for putting ambition and desire above loyalty and love. But it was also a narrative of resilience and redemption, a testament that even out of the ashes of tragedy, one can rebuild something meaningful. He never remarried. Instead, he poured himself into the foundation, traveling to speak at youth workshops or new project inaugurations. Whenever he stood before a group of eager children, his voice would tighten with emotion as he recounted how the foundation came to be. Born of Kat's dream, fueled by her compassion, and, in a strange twist, forged by the regret that haunted him every day. He confessed to them that true connection, kindness, and authenticity were priceless treasures, more valuable than any fortune. And so, the memory of Catherine Ellsworth Barrington lived on in each painting a child drew, each note they played. Her spirit guided them all, whispering that out of pain could grow purpose, and out of grief could flourish a legacy of hope.